Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. I'm Morgan, the anti-mom, and today I'm going to be talking about my teen mom story. So if you want to hear about how I became a mom, pregnant at 19 and also married before I gave birth, just keep on watching. So I'm going to jump right in this video, but I do ask if you would like, comment, and subscribe and hit that notification bell down below to subscribe to my channel and see all my updates. Thank you guys so much for watching, and let's jump right into this video. In high school, I pretty much dated the same exact guy, and for the purpose of this story today, we will call that fella Paul. So I dated Paul all the way through high school from the 10th grade until graduation. Of course, we had an on-again, off-again relationship as all high schoolers do. And then I moved to another nearby city after graduation. I got into college and he decided to take another path, so he didn't go to school right after high school. And so I'm about, I would say, maybe 45 minutes outside of our hometown. So at the time, he would drive up on weekends. You know, we were still kind of like trying to make it work. Yeah, it wasn't really working, but you know, we were really trying, still very much focused on like school or whatever. He was working at the time, so he was focused on work. And I mean, we hung out a lot. Like, we were in a relationship, so we were pretty much inseparable, but we definitely were not looking to make life plans like having a child and getting married and all that stuff. But, you know, as kids do, we were doing things very recklessly, obviously having unprotected sex. I had my own, well, I had a roommate at the time. So we shared an apartment, and he would come up there on the weekends, and, you know, you're playing house, basically. I think for the most part, my parents kind of knew that he would come up. We never really talked about the fact that I was sexually active at the time, but I think to a certain degree, they knew. I've been always really focused on like school and those things. And so for the most part, I don't think that they really felt like they had a lot to worry about. I mean, I didn't really feel like they had a lot to worry about. And so at one point, Paul was over at my house, and it was the weekend, and we were like hanging out, and I started getting these horrible stomach pains. I never have had like a consistent period, so missing my period, that wasn't something that I paid attention to, and it wasn't something that would have really called for a lot of like alarm, or it wouldn't have made me go, oh my gosh, maybe I'm pregnant. At this point, I probably thought I was invincible, to be completely honest. You know, we would use condoms sometimes, and then sometimes they would fall off, and then sometimes we wouldn't, and it was just, you know what, it was reckless, and it was, I don't know what I was doing back then. I was like, I don't know what's going on with me. I'm in a whole lot of pain. And Paul goes, okay, well, maybe you're pregnant. So I'm like, okay, maybe I'm pregnant. So nonetheless, we didn't really do anything. We didn't say anything about it, but we decided to go to the ER because the pain was kind of getting worse. So I like called my mom, and I was like, hey mom, I'm, again, still a child. Hey mom, what is the insurance? What hospital can I go to? Blah, 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 blah. So we go to the nearest hospital, which is in this very small college town. So it's a hospital that I've never really been to. So me and Paul go there, and then, you know, we're all sitting there. So the doctor comes back in, and he was like, congratulations. And I was like, and Paul was like, and I was still like, he was like, you're gonna be a mom. And he, what now? Why? Yeah, so he was like, you're gonna be a mom, and, you know, you're gonna be a dad, and, you know, Paul is still over there like, and I'm like, So we go back home, and we go back to my apartment. At the time, my roommate was still my best friend, was my best friend back then, and she actually had a child in high school as well, so her child at the time is like 3. So we get home, and I'm ultimately kind of scared to tell her because, like, I've seen her struggle. I know that, like, this is not easy. And, you know, I'm just, like, thinking about all the people that are going to be disappointed in me and all of that. So And so I get back to the house and I'm like, hey, she was like, did y'all find out what happened? Like, what's going on? And so she was on the way out the door and I was like, yeah, we found out that I'm pregnant. And she was like, you stupid. And she just closed the door and got in the car and drove away to wherever she was going. And I was like, and so and so Paul is like, we need to call your mom. Paul's mom at the time was deceased, and he was like, we need to call my sister. Like, we need to tell people, like, it's time. And I'm like, don't you understand I'm gonna die? Like, do you understand that I'm about to die? It hadn't really hit me yet, honestly, but for the most part, I was like, okay. So actually at the time when I found out, I was probably like maybe 7 or 8 weeks, and I didn't actually tell my mom until I was like 9 weeks. So I told my mom. It took me a long time. I actually avoided her for like weeks. And so I walk into her room at the time, like visiting home on the weekend, and she's like reading, and I go and like sit by her, and she's like, what you got going on? And we just kind of talking, and she's like, I haven't been sleeping, and something's going on, and I don't know what it is. And like, if any of y'all have religious moms, y'all understand. And I'm like, it's me, I'm the reason, it's me. And so I was like, I have something to tell you. And she was like, okay, so she just like keeps reading her book, and she like, what's going on? And I'm like, I'm pregnant. And she just didn't flinch. Like, I'm pregnant, and this is her. And I'm like, Mom, did you hear me? I'm pregnant. And she's like, and I'm like, and she like, and I'm still like, and she was like, no, you're not. And I was like, I am pregnant. And she was like, well, you won't be tomorrow. What you mean? What you mean? And so she was like, so she keep doing this evil laugh, and I'm getting even more scared. And at the time, my Paul is sitting in the front room, and he's like texting me. He's like, what's going on? And so she was like, she looks up and she goes, who knows? And I was like, my best friend at the time, Paul. And she was like, okay, you can go. So at this point, I'm like, what's going to happen to me when I'm asleep? Like, is she about to get a coat hanger? Like, what are we about to do? So a little bit of time passed. I go to sleep. I wake up the next morning. She not talking to me. She didn't say a word to me for at least 5 days. Nothing. Didn't look in my direction. Didn't say anything. So then she sends me a message, and she was like, you and Paul need to come to my house with a plan on how y'all gonna take care of Peanut. And I'm like, okay, so this is how we're gonna take care of Peanut. Like, I can achieve this. It's gonna be great. So I bring her and my dad the plan at the time. So me and Paul are sitting there, and she was like, we sit down. I'm like, here goes the plan. And she like, okay. So she looks over, and she's like, I don't see y'all getting married on here. And I was like, we aren't getting married. And she was like, oh, you getting married? And I was like, that wasn't really in the plan. We was trying to see if, we could just have the baby and just, raise it like normal people. And she was like, you gonna get married or you gonna get cut off? I'm gonna go ahead and get married. Like, what's that like? I'm trying to see if it was something that I needed to plan, or if you was gonna plan it, or how we was gonna do it. So then she was like, how far along are you? And I'm like, oh, at this time I was maybe like 11 weeks. She was like, okay, so you probably start showing around 16 weeks. We got 6 weeks to plan the wedding. Paul, you need to propose. So Paul like, all right, cool. Like, yeah, okay, cool. Let me give Paul some credit. He was very supportive throughout this whole thing. He was also very excited that we would be having a baby. I was very focused on school and my career at the time, and that's just not where my head was. That's kind of like where my apprehension was, and I didn't really feel like that was the best move for us at the time. But being somebody that had a very sheltered life and parents that really did a lot for me, and a mom that was always very supportive in everything that I did, it was very hard for me to understand what it might be like if I didn't have her support. And so in that case, it was just like, well, she's led me this far, so why would I even argue or push back? So we planned a wedding in 6 weeks. Paul proposed at some point in between those hazy 6 weeks. I was married by July. Before I actually started showing the day I got married, the very next morning. Surprise. I was in so much pain. I didn't have sex on my honeymoon. I didn't really want to be touched. I wasn't very kind to Paul at all. And I think that I had a lot of overall resentment because I didn't feel like I had a lot of control in the situation. So yeah, and then, as time progressed, I had a lot of teachers tell me that I was at that point in time, I was on a full scholarship. I was on the honors track. And a lot of people told me that I wasn't going to be able to finish school, that I wasn't going to be successful. And so I carried little Peanut. This was in July. Peanut was born in January. Delivery. I went into labor. I was due on January 13th. I went into labor on January 12th. I was what they call nesting. I was going up and down the stairs. I was cleaning my apartment. Paul was at work. I was going back and forth, back and forth. 2 days before, I went to the doctor and he checked me and my mucus plug came out. So my mom had told me that I was probably going to end up going into labor pretty soon. So I went back. I was still in that college town. So I went back about 45 minutes later and I started cleaning. I started getting everything ready. And then I started having contractions. And I started to really feel them. So me and Peanut's dad drove back to the city where I'm from. And he actually brought me to my mom's house. And then he was supposed to go get me a pizza because that was like my meal that I wanted before I went into labor. And somehow he ended up stopping at his friend's house to play the Xbox. I will never forgive you for that, Paul. Didn't really appreciate that. But yes, I went into labor and I was in labor with my oldest son, Nolan, for probably about 26 hours. And his beautiful dimpled face came out on January 13th around 12 p.m. And I've never looked back, and I'm very thankful for that little blessing. The day he was born was the day I was turning in my books for the fall semester. Literally, as I was contracting, I was turning in my books. 2 days after he was born was the first day of my Spanish class, and I was sitting in class. It was a mandatory class. If you didn't attend, you would be dropped. And so I had my mom bring me, and I limped up the stairs. There was no elevator, and I sat right there in my class. And I still graduated in 3 years. And I think that I did it out of the fact that I felt like, and I keep saying I felt like because I did have control in hindsight. 10 years later, I completely understand how that situation could have gone differently and how it was no one's responsibility or no one's fault to take control of their lives except me. But at the time, I felt like the only thing that I did have control over was school and the life that I had after. And I was determined to not be a statistic. I was determined to not be someone that didn't make it just because they had a baby. And I was determined to make sure that my kids were my kid at the time was my motivation and never my distraction or never my excuse. And so I pushed and I did it. And yeah, I was married for 5 years. I had another child 3 years after my first one. So I was a mom of 2 by 24. I'm a married mom of 2 by 24, divorced by 25. And here I am today. I turned 29 2 weeks ago, and I've never been a statistic. My kids have never been my excuse. They have always been my motivation. I say all that to say, if you are watching this and you are a teen mom, it does not stop there. Kids don't keep you from accomplishing your goals. I missed out on a lot of things that some of my friends were doing, but in the end, that was never what was important to me anyway. Kids are no kids. So if anything, they've kept me motivated, and they've kept me on track. And if I could do it all over again, maybe I would switch up the time, and maybe I would change a few things, but I wouldn't take them out of the equation, because I don't think I would be who I am today. Yeah, and his beautiful dimpled face came out on January 13th around 12 p.m. And I've never looked back, and I'm very thankful for that little blessing. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please like, comment, subscribe, click the notification bell. And if you want to see part 2 of what actually happened with that marriage and the second baby and all that, give this video a thumbs up. But other than that, I will see you guys in my next one.